even if you have fear, don't let the fear paralyze you from acting in faith. And Moses called to all the children of Israel and said to them, you have seen all the good which the Lord your God had done for you in the wilderness. Now therefore observe all the words of this law, and walk in the way of the Lord your God. Turn not from the way which the Lord has commanded you, either to the right or to the left. And Moses taught the children of Israel statutes and judgments and laws to do in the land, as the Lord had commanded him. And he taught them the way of the Lord and his laws. Behold, they are written upon the book of the law, the Torah of God, which he gave to the children of Israel by the hand of Moses. And Moses finished commanding the children of Israel. And the Lord said to him, saying, go up to the Mount Abarim, and die there, and be gathered unto thy people, as Aaron thy brother was gathered. And Moses went up to the Lord as he had commanded him. And Moses went up as the Lord had commanded him, and he died there in the land of Moab. No, Moses, his body was hid. No body of Moses has ever been found. By the order of the Lord, and then forth he went. Excuse me. By order of the Lord, in the 40th year, from the Israelites going forth from the land of Egypt. And the children of Israel wept for Moses in the plains of Moab for 30 days, and the days of weeping and mourning for Moses was completed. And it was after the death of Moses that the Lord said to Jasher, the son of Nun, saying, rise up and pass the Jordan. Rise up and pass the Jordan to the land which I have given to the children of Israel. And thou shalt make the children of Israel inherit the land. Every place upon which the sole of your feet shall tread shall belong to you, from the wilderness of Lebanon unto the great river of Perith shall be your boundary. God's for borders. No man shall stand up against thee all the days of thy life. As I was with Moses, so I will be with thee. Only be strong and of good courage to observe all the law which Moses commanded thee. Turn not thy way either to the right or to the left, in order that thou mayest prosper in all that thou doest. And Joshua commanded the officers of Israel, saying, pass through the camp. Now, the lesson you should learn from Joshua. Moses had his generation. He passed on. But God always has another man of God for the next generation waiting in the wings that's been groomed to train to carry on God's mission. Joshua's a good example of that. But look how long Joshua followed before he was leading. That's the problem. You got a lot of these kids with freckles that haven't been anything, haven't been under the tutorship of anyone. And all of a sudden they're pastoring the church. And that's why you have such helter-skelter, pandemonium in the church. Because you have to be groomed, you have to be trained. You have to go on the backside of the mountain for a number of years before you're ready to receive the reins of any kind of ministry, carry any of the fivefold. That's what we got here. And Joshua commanded the officers of Israel, saying, pass through the camp and command the people, saying, prepare for yourselves provisions, for in 3 days more you will pass the Jordan to possess the land. And the officers of the children of Israel did so, and they commanded the people, and they did all Joshua had commanded. And Joshua sent 2 men to spy out the land of Jericho. Notice it's 2. It was only Joshua and Caleb. He said, I ain't gonna do the 12 spies. We were seeing how that went. Now it's down to 2. Because it was only 2. Mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses, some's established anyway, that had a good report of the land, and that's Joshua and Caleb. So Joshua sent 2 men to spy out the land of Jericho. And the men went and spied out Jericho. And at the end of 7 days, they came to Joshua in the camp and said to him, the Lord has delivered the whole land into our hand, and the inhabitants thereof are melted and weak are melted with fear because of us. God already have them terrorized before they got there. And it came to pass that after that Joshua rose up in the morning, and all Israel with him, and they journeyed from Shittim. And Joshua and all Israel with him passed the Jordan. Jordan means descending judgment, always a type of death and rebirth. And Joshua was 82 years old when he passed the Jordan with Israel. And the people went up from Jordan, and on the 10th day of the first month, and they encamped in Gilgal, at the eastern corner of Jericho. And the children of Israel kept the Passover in Gilgal, in the plain of Jericho, on the 14th day of the month, as it is written in the law of Moses. And the manna ceased at that time. I told you. The angel food cakes that God was raining down on them dried up. Now, they're in the land of promise, and they got to fight to obtain that promise. They got to have the faith, and they got to get their own food. They had to mature the war to take the land and get their own food. And the manna ceased at that time on the morrow of the Passover, and there was no more manna for the children of Israel. And they ate of the produce of the land of Canaan. Told you. And Jericho was entirely closed. And Jericho was entirely closed against the children of Israel. No one came out or went in. And it was in the 2nd month of the day of the month that the Lord said to Joshua, rise up. Behold, I have given Jericho unto thy hand with all thy people thereof. Or with all the people thereof. And all your fighting men shall go around the city once each day. Thus shall you do for 6 days. Now this seemed kind of ludicrous. You had this picture of these walls. These walls was walled up. I mean, these were giants. So you can imagine the size of the walls. I mean, easily, these walls was at least 100 feet tall. Easily. So you're looking at this walled up city, and they look, I'm sure they can look out over the wall and they see these people just going round and round and round. It probably would take them, be, I would say, at least a couple of miles with a fortified city like that just to go around once. No, I'm close. Around and round and round. It makes no sense military strategically in the natural. But that's what God ordered them to do. Go round and round and round. Let's see what else God ordered them to do. And the priest shall blow upon the trumpets. And when you shall hear the sound of the trumpet, all the people shall give a great shouting, that the walls of the city shall fall down. So they're going to go round and round 7 times. And on the 7th day, I think they went 7 times. And then there's going to be a shout from the people. And the walls, these great walls, some like 6 feet, 5 to 6 feet thick, 100 feet high. They're going to come tumbling down. All the people shall give a shouting, a great shouting, and the walls of the city shall fall down. All the people shall go up on every man against his opponent. And Joshua did so according to all the Lord had commanded him, simple obedience. And on the 7th day, they went around the city 7 times, told you. And the priest blew upon the trumpets. And at the 7th round, Joshua said to the people, shout, for the Lord hath delivered the whole city into our hands. Only the city and all that it contains shall be accursed to the Lord. And keep yourselves from the accursed thing, lest you make the camp of Israel accursed and trouble it. But all the silver and gold and brass and iron shall be consecrated to the Lord. It's first fruits. First city. They shall come into the treasury of the Lord. And the people blew upon the trumpets and made a great shouting, and the walls of Jericho fell down. They got proof of that. They found those walls of Jericho thanks to biblical archaeology. It's a fact. Fell down, and all the people went up, every man, straight before him. And they took the city and utterly destroyed all that was in it, both man and woman, young and old, and sheep and ass, with the edge of the sword. And they burned the whole city with fire. Only the vessels of silver, gold, and brass and iron did they put into the treasury of the Lord. Gold, silver, brass, and iron was saved in the whole city, and everybody in it killed and burned. And Joshua swore at the time, saying, cursed be the man who builds Jericho. He shall lay the foundation thereof in his firstborn, and in his youngest son shall be set up. And the gates thereof, set up the gates thereof. And and Achan, taught on Achan, and Achan, the son of Carmi, the son of Zabi, the son of Zerah, the son of Judah, dealt treacherously in the accursed thing, and he took of the accursed thing and hid it in a tent. And the anger of the Lord was kindled against Israel. And it was after this, when the children of Israel had returned from burning Jericho, Joshua sent me to spy out also Ai and to fight against him. And the men went up and spied out Ai, and they returned and said, let not all the people go up with thee to Ai. Only let about 10,000, only let about 3,000 men go up and smite the city, for the men thereof are very few. We don't need much for this bunch. 10,000's enough. So they thought. And Joshua did so. And there went up with him of the children of Israel about 3,000 men. And they fought against the men of Ai. And the battle was severe against Israel. And the men of Ai smote 36 men of Israel. And the children of Israel fled from before the men of Ai. And when Joshua saw this thing, he tore his garments and fell upon his face to the ground before the Lord. He with the elders of Israel, and they put dust upon their heads, symbol of mourning and weeping. And Joshua said, Why, O Lord, didst thou bring this people over Jordan? What shall I say after the Israelites have turned their backs against their enemies? What I'm going to say to give these people heart and encouragement, you promised you would deliver them into our enemies into our hands, and they got their butts kicked. Now what do I say to build up their morale and confidence? Joshua's asking God. This is his prayer. And therefore, all the Canaanites, inhabitants of the land, will hear this thing. We're going to be an embarrassment. And they're gonna get hard behind this and surround us and cut off our name. And the Lord said to Joshua, Why dost thou fall upon thy face? Why are you praying to me? Rise, get up off. Rise, get thee off, for the Israelites have sinned and taken an accursed thing, and I will no more be with thee, unless they destroy the accursed thing from amongst them. And Joshua rose up and assembled the people, and brought Urim by the order of the Lord. That was a clear stone. And the tribe of Judah was taken, and Achan, the son of Carmi, was taken. And Joshua said to Achan, Tell me, my son, what hast thou done? And Achan said, I saw amongst the spoil a goodly garment of Shinar and spoil. Now Shinar is part of Babylon. A goodly garment of Shinar and 200 shekels of silver and a wedge of gold of 50 shekels weight. I coveted them. I was greedy. Boy, he fit right into the church world today with the prosperity pimping and how they've taken God and made him a giant Vegas slot machine. He fit right on in there with this greed. The need for greed, yes indeed. This is a mammon lesson right here. Demon of greed. He said, I coveted them. He was honest. He confessed. I coveted them and took them. And behold, they are all hid in the earth, in the midst of the tent. So he buried them in the sand of his tent, underneath his tent. He was very honest. And Joshua sent men and took them from the tent of Achan, and they brought them to Joshua. And Joshua took Achan and these utensils and his sons and daughters and all belongings to him And they brought them into the valley of Achor. And Joshua burnt them there with fire. And all Israelites stoned Achan with stones. And they raised over him a heap of stones. Therefore did he call the place the valley of Achor. So the Lord's anger was appeased. And Joshua afterward came to the city and fought against it. And the Lord said to Joshua, Fear not, neither be thou dismayed. No fear. How many times did you count when God said, Fear not, or Christ said, Fear not? No fear. No fear, no fear, no fear. Now in the Revelations, you read Revelations, I believe it's Revelations 21:10 or something like that. When he's talking about the people that's being thrown into the lake of fire, the final destination of sinners and fallen angels that rebelled against God. Satan, including himself, is in there already burning by that time. You got a date for him too. You read that in Revelations 20:10. But anyway, the first thing God names is the fearful. That's thrown into the lake of fire. The fearful, the unbelieving, the whoremongers, the sorcerers, adulterers, and all liars. Now they part in the lake of fire. But the first thing he singles out is the fearful. And you hear God saying over and over, fear not, do not be afraid. Jesus said in the New Testament, he said, fear not men that can destroy the flesh. And after that, that's all, nothing else he can do but fear ye him that can destroy the flesh and cast the soul in hell fire. I say, yeah, fear ye him. The fear of God is a healthy fear. But other than that, that displaces all fear of anything else, including man. Now, one cursed thing held them up. I want you to put in, God told me, get off and stop praying. It's time for praying. That's why I had a lesson on that. So much Christianity now has been deduced to being praying mantises. The prayer is part of what God has planned and purpose, but it's not all of it. Excuse me, it's not to be substituted for action either. God expects us to do some things besides pray. Now we read that story clearly with Joshua. Get up, get off your face, and go get that accursed thing from among Israel and kill the culprit that brought this plague on Egypt. This curse on Israel. And Joshua burned them there with fire. And all the Israelites stoned Achan with stones. And they raised up over him a heap of stones. Therefore did he call the place the valley of Achor, as the Lord's anger was appeased. I don't want to piss God off. And Joshua afterward came to the city and fought against it. And the Lord said to Joshua, Fear not, neither be thou dismayed. Behold, I have given unto thy hand Ai, her king, and all her people. And thou shalt do unto them as thou did unto Jericho and her king. Only the spoil thereof and the cattle thereof shall you take for prey for yourselves. Lay in ambush for the city behind it. So Joshua did according to the word of the Lord, and chose from amongst the sons of war 30,000 valiant men. And he sent them, and they lay in ambush for the city. And he commanded them, saying, when you shall see us, we will flee from before them with cunning and they will pursue us. You shall then rise out of the ambush and take the city. And they did so. And Joshua fought, and the men of the city went out toward Israel, not knowing that they were lying in ambush for them behind the city. And Joshua and all Israel, the Israelites, feigned themselves wearied, not before them. And they fled by the way of the wilderness with cunning. And the men of Ai gathered all the people who were in the city to pursue the Israelites. And they went out and were drawn away from the city. Not one remained. They left the city open and pursued Israelites. And those that were lying in ambush rose up out of their places and hastened to come to the city and took it and set it on fire. And the men of Ai turned back, and behold, the smoke of the city ascended to the skies, and they had no means of retreating neither one way or the other. And all the men of Ai went in the midst of Israel, some on this side and some on that side, and they smote them, so that not one of them remained. And the children of Israel took Moloch, king of Ai, alive, and they brought him to Joshua. And Joshua hanged him on a tree, and he died. And pretty ruthless, this book, isn't it? It's a workbook. I told you it's not an easy bake oven sugar cooking cookbook, as most Christianity reduced it down as a workbook. Lots of war and killing in this book is a war book. And the children of Israel returned to the city, having burned it, and killed all in it with the edge of the sword through war. And the number of those that had fallen of the men of Ai, both men and women, were 12,000. Killed the women too. Only the cattle and the spoil of the city they took to themselves, according to the word of the Lord to Joshua. And all the kings on this side of Jordan and all the kings of Canaan heard of the evil which the children of Israel had done to Jericho and to Ai, and they gathered themselves together to fight against Israel. Only the inhabitants of Gibeon were greatly afraid of fighting against the Israelites, lest they should perish. And they acted cunningly. They did something slick. And they came to Joshua and to all Israel and said unto them, We have come from a distant land. Now therefore make a covenant with us. And the inhabitants of Gibeon overreached the children of Israel. And the children of Israel made a covenant with them, and they made peace with them. And the princes and the congregation swore unto them. But afterward the children of Israel knew that they were neighbors to them, and were dwelling amongst them. But the children of Israel slew them not, for they had sworn to them by the Lord, and they became hewers of wood and drawers of water. And Joshua said unto them, Why did you deceive me to do this thing to us? And they answered him, saying, Because it was told to thy servants all that thou had done to all the kings of the Amorites. And we were greatly afraid, at least they were honest, of our lives. And we did this thing. And Joshua appointed them on that day to hew wood and to draw water. And he divided them for slaves. Slavery been around for a long time. Divided them for slaves to all the tribes of Israel. All the tribes, all 12 tribes. And when Adonijah, the king of Jerusalem, heard all that the children of Israel had done to Jericho and to Ai, he went to Hobam. He went to Hoham, king of Hebron, and to Param, king of Jarmuth, and to Japhia, king of Lachish, and to Deber, king of Eglon, saying, Come up to me and help me, that we may smite the children of Israel and the inhabitants of Gibeon, who have made peace with the children of Israel. He didn't like that either. And they gathered themselves together, and the 5 kings of the Amorites went up with all the camps, a mighty people, numerous as the sand of the seashore. And all the kings came and encamped before Gibeon, and they began to fight against the inhabitants of Gibeon. And all the men of Gibeon went to Joshua, saying, Come up quickly to us and help us, for all the kings of the Amorites had gathered together to fight against us. And Joshua and all the fighting people of Israel went up from Gilgal, and Joshua came suddenly to them and smote them, and smote these 5 kings with the edge of with a great slaughter. Smote these 5 kings with a great slaughter. And the Lord confounded them before the children of Israel, who smote them with a terrible slaughter in Gibeon, and pursued them along the way that goes up to Beth Horn and into Makkedah. And they fled from before the children of Israel. And while they were fleeing, the Lord sent upon them hailstones. Can you picture this? They're running for their lives, and here God decided to chime in and drop some giant hailstones on their head. Don't want to mess with God's people. Might end up with